Camille, deserted motel in South Dakota. Bianca's eyes were huge as she stood frozen in the doorframe. Her shrill voice could have shattered a vase if the cheap motel had one. "What the hell?" Gage took a step inside the doorway. His was a wordless reaction as he grabbed Bianca and yanked her behind him. They had just arrived in our remote hideaway in South Dakota, and from their reaction to seeing Drake, both had been unaware that he was no longer in human form. I wanted to shout, "Surprise!" but no one would have appreciated the humor, especially Drake. I eased myself in front of Drake, plastered a smile on my face, and made my expression as welcoming as possible. Though my voice was unsteady, I tried to at least control the tempo so it wouldn't be too fast or too slow. "So, how was your trip?" Gage's eyes glanced my way, but quickly returned to the towering centaur standing behind me. Drake stood over 7 feet tall. His bare chest was exposed, every muscle rigid. At his waist, the body of a brown horse now stood where his legs should have been. He was an imposing sight, and neither Bianca nor Gage had been prepared to see him like this. Both were too stunned to speak for an uncomfortable minute. Drake's eyes went to the floor. He'd expected this reaction and told me we should have warned them ahead of time. Drake and Gage had been close friends growing up. If anyone would blindly accept his transformation, Drake hoped it would be Gage. Their reaction to seeing him as a true centaur wounded him. He didn't need to say it out loud. I felt his pain. Bianca peeked around Gage's tall shoulders. I'd missed her. Bianca reminded me of a living, breathing Barbie doll. Her long blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and easy smile drew people to her. A quick flash of a memory sped through my mind. She and I had been outside William's house shortly after I learned I was a Centauride. I was still learning about Centauride powers, and Bianca took it upon herself to teach me how to hide my thoughts from others. A smile emerged at the memory. The thoughts she was helping me to hide at the time were of Drake, her betrothed. I shared this memory with her telepathically. When I did, her eyes lit up. She closed her eyes, then pushed one of her memories to me. It was an image of Gage and her standing in the surf, exchanging their wedding vows. More than just an image, I felt the cool of the water on her feet, the heat from the sun beating down, and the smoothness of the sand between her toes. As her wedding day memory faded, she stepped away from her centaur barrier, aka Gage, and pulled me into a death grip of a hug. The initial shock of seeing Drake had worn off, at least for Bianca. Gage and Drake both looked like they were ready to tackle the other if an aggressive move were made. We had been through so much together in a short period of time. All 4 of us had. Bianca and I first met at my brother Bruce's wedding when she was engaged to Drake. Within days, she decided Drake and I were destined for one another. She never told me why she believed it, but it probably had something to do with her being madly in love with Gage at the time. She didn't let the fact that she and Drake were already betrothed stop her from matchmaking. Bianca had become my first friend after I found out I was a Centauride. I wanted to know everything that had happened since we separated after our escape from Xandra's house. What little glimpse she shared with me looked amazing, but it had been weeks since we saw each other. Bianca's voice answered in my head. "I'll never be able to thank you enough." I could have answered her telepathically, but Gage and Drake were still eyeing each other with concern. Speaking for Drake and me, "We're glad it worked out, for all of us." Gage refused to take his eyes off of Drake. Drake made it a habit of not moving around much in the cramped motel room. The less he moved, the less damage happened to the little room. Drake took a ginger step forward. One of his strides now was nearly the length of 2 of mine. This landed Drake squarely in front of Gage, towering nearly a foot over him. Gage's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Bianca turned toward Gage, scolding him as if he were a child. "No more trying to catch snowflakes. We're inside. Close your mouth.